This is Hack the Sat, helping you find the tips and tricks to ace these standardized tests. Alrighty, so let's do the test. You can find this on the College Board website or linked in the description below. Print it out and let's get prepared. So the general formulas again. Alright, question 1. First up are some graphs. This question is asking when the rate, which happens to be the y, is increasing and then decreasing. So all you have to do is look at the slope. The time from 40 to 60 shows exactly this trend, and there's no flatlining as well. It goes up and then it's down. So increase rate, decrease rate. That's going to make B the correct answer. Number 2, algebra. This is just simple plug and chug, solve for k. So 24 equals k times 6, k is 4, y equals kx. You know the drill. That's going to equal 4 times 5 equals 20. That should be C. Question 3. In the lines above, alright, so this is all about geometry and lines. It tells us which ones are parallel. So draw and label. Know the alternate interior angles and other types of related angles. And once you marked it, it's just like a fill-in-the-blank game or crossword. So these two should be similar, and so this should be similar. Remember, these are straight angles, so it's going to add up to 180, and the answer should be D. This is going to be 35. Alternatively, you could have seen this angle equals this angle, which equals this angle, because of the parallel lines. So that's another way to check yourself. Number 4, words. Now you have to take the words they gave us and turn out an equation. This is the bad part of the SAT. They can't keep math to math, writing to writing. They have to match them together for whatever reason. So after writing an equation, we should be able to get the answer of C, of 16. So 16 plus 4x is 10 more than 14. So 14 plus 10, then you'll get that, right? So then it's just into this. This should be 24. 4x equals 8. Now time out real quick. You see 4x equals 8. You could solve for x and then plug it into 8x, but 4x is exactly half of 8x. So if you multiply this times 2 to 8x and do the same for this, you'll get 16. Easy. Alright, question 5, words. Oops, sorry, more stats questions. Strong negative association. This is the thing that we want to find over here. So we need to find something that is downward sloping for negative and also tight for a strong association. That's going to give us D. Number 6. Alright, these are conversions. Now if you've taken chemistry, this dimensional analysis is pretty easy to do. First thing to do is figure out what exactly you're trying to find out and convert. So it's 1 2 decagram container. And you can just use this conversion chart over here. All you need to do is really match up the variables with each other so that they will cancel. Up and downs always cancel. So if you do this, you should be able to get 20,000, which is D. Number 7, graphs. This is all about scale in English. Together, all these bars have to add up to something T thousands. And if you look at this, all you really have to do is sort of guesstimate for a second. The total is 27,500. So that means all these bars have to equal it. And over here you have single numbers. So if they're all about a few thousand, together times 5, you'll get around 27,500. So that actually looks about right. And if you have extra time, you can always approximate these numbers, put them in your calculator, and you should get the same answer. Number 8, absolute values. When solving absolute value, just remember that there are always two possibilities, a positive and negative case. Make sure to always account for this and you should be good. So absolute value of n minus 1 plus 1 equals 0. Isolate the absolute values equals negative 1, but remember absolute value is plus and minus, so n minus 1 equals negative 1. Or the other case would be negative n plus 1 equals negative 1. So actually, if you look at this, take a time out. The absolute value of anything is always going to be positive. Always positive. Alright? So you can actually never get -1. Therefore, there's no such answer for this. It's D. Question sets 9 and 10 are grouped together. This looks like another linear equation type problem, so mx plus b. 9 is just simple rearranging, which we have done before. This time we just want to solve for t over here. And if you do that, it should be fairly simple. Isolate the t, so a minus 1052 over 1.08. That's a, as we have seen. Okay. Number 10, plug and chug. We want the sound wave, which in this equation is represented by the variable of a, and we want it to equal 1000. This would be really good for a calculator real quick, and that's something important. In this section, you really have to be selective when using a calculator, because sometimes it can really just slow you down. So it's really just a simple plug and chug. So we already had the equation given above. So 1000 minus 1052 over 1.08. That should be able to give us B. Alright, 11. Inequalities. The key to solving inequalities is basically just to treat them like an equal sign, but kind of be aware of the sign. And if simply doing this, you should be able to solve, isolate 4x minus 3x, you'll get x less than equal, make sure you watch the sign, -5 plus 3, remember to flip the sign, is going to equal -2. So x less than equal to -2. A is not good. Number 12, you gotta know how to read a histogram. To get total seeds, we need to multiply the number of apples that have a certain number of seeds by the number of seeds that they actually have. So number of seeds times the number of apples that actually have that amount of seeds. And so to get that, you would basically multiply the y and x value to get the total number of seeds. Add it up, you'll get around 73. And then you need to see the total number of apples that were included in this sample. That's just all these bars added up. So that's going to give you 12. So this question is asking closest to the average. So obviously this answer is going to give you a decimal number. 12 times 6 is about 72, which is super close to 73, so we can think that the answer is probably C. Question 13, more stats. This question makes it seem like we need to test everything, and yes we do, but we can do so selectively. The question says that 19% out of total respondents, which is about 310, should give us around 59. So as a result, we want the choice that is going to give us the number 59. Since the question is asking for 19% of all survey respondents, use your calculator real quick. You'll see 59, geometry male, C. Question 14, even more stats. And looking at this, it's saying which will change the most if the 24-inch measurement is removed from the data. Looking at the set, just eyeballing, you can see that 24 kind of looks like an outlier. Means and medians are measures of the group as a whole, so out of many. Removing one isn't going to do much, especially a number that's way out there. However, range measures how wide a set is. So since 24 is way outside, this would actually be affected quite a lot. Generally, D is not the answer. Okay. 15. More linear equations. The c-intercept or y-intercept, remember, are the initial points on a graph. C is 5, so we know to choose the only thing with the word initial in it. That's what it's asking, so that is going to give us A. Number 16. Writing a linear equation. We need the y-intercept, remember, which we just calculated earlier, and A and D both don't have that, so they aren't going to be the choices that we want. And the slope, 3, is the cost per hour. We can see this here. This has a rise of 3 over 1. So that is going to be our slope. That's the m in mx plus b. That's your slope. This is your y-intercept. Make sure to really know that. 3, as we said, that's going to make the answer C. Question 17. It's asking for f of x at its minimum. Easily we can just look at the point on the graph, which has the lowest point. In here, it's going to be -3. But it's asking for what value of x? Oh yeah, it is -3 because -3, -2, the actual value is -2. But be careful, it's asking for x, so that's what you want the answer to be. All right, now to question 18. 18 is about inequalities, but actually it's very tricky, and it's testing math logic. So it's stuff that we don't really learn in schools. Just looking at this, it seems like graphing would be a pretty good way to compare, but if you do that, you'll soon run into a sufficient versus necessary condition, where things don't always appear as they should. So if you just read the question, just take it piece by piece. They say that 0, 0 must be a solution to the system. So plug it into both equations, so you get 0 less than 0 plus a, 0 greater than 0 plus b. So from this, you can figure out a is greater than 0 and b is less than 0. All right, if you make sure to include this and then you graph it out, you shouldn't really have a problem. Let's say this top graph is blue and this bottom graph is green. A greater than 0, so you'll have something like this. Oops, sorry, wrong color. Or blue, less than this, dot, dot, dot. And then green, b is negative, remember. Greater than, you'll get this. And sure enough, 0, 0 is included in this. And in this case, a is greater than b. So that looks good. Of course, b greater than a is not good. And in this case, a equals negative b. Not necessarily. As long as a is greater than 0 and b is less than 0, this thing is going to work. So now, looking at c, we see absolute value of a is greater than absolute value of b. Remember, abs are always positive, and b has to be less than 0, so that's not what we want here. So that's going to give us a. The answer, pretty simple. But you have to be careful. Don't just directly graph this, because if you do, you might stumble across the case something like this. If both a is greater than b, like this, in this case, a greater than b is still fulfilled, but 0, 0 is not included in this set. Remember, 0, 0 is a precondition. It must be included. So although choice A is not all-inclusive, if you just graph it, you won't necessarily get 0, 0. For this precise choice, it's going to be the correct answer because A has to be greater than 0 and B has to be less than 0. 19. More linear equations. So very simply, we can just write an equation, and this will be pretty easy to solve. Salads for $6.50 each and drinks for $2 each. So 6.5s plus 2d. They made a total of $836.50. All right, and salads plus drinks, they sold a total of $209. Very simple elimination. D, you can just multiply by 2 this whole row, and then you can eliminate D. You should be able to solve for S, which is the variable we want, salads. The answer, in the interest of time, should be B, 93. Editor version of Alex here. Taking a look at this weird question, I wrote this to maybe better help us all conceptualize. We know that A has to be greater than 0 and B has to be less than 0. And we figured out that A greater than B would satisfy this choice in this case. So A greater than B is sufficient, but it's not always necessarily true. If you have A greater than B, you could have a case like this, which would not include 0, 0. So the most important thing to realize is while A greater than B satisfies this must condition that we figured out earlier, it's not always going to work. So don't always work backwards and try to figure it out, because in this case, it's not going to work here. Question 20, percent problems. We have a 20% discount, but then we also need to pay sales tax on top of that discount. One easy way to do this would actually be to work backwards. Start with what we would end up with, the current price P, oops, sorry, as given in this equation and work backwards to find the OG price. Then take the OG price and divide by what it took to get us here to the current price. So first we have to take a 20% discount, so that's 0.8 of the original price. And then we have to pay 8% sales tax to this. So it's the whole of 1 plus 0.08, which is the 8% sales tax. Alright, that's C, which is what we currently have. But we don't actually want that because that actually gives us the current price for it. Instead, we want the original price. So we really just need to take the current price, P, and divide it by the conversion factors to get the original price, which we can call X. That's going to be D. And if you work backwards, you can think of it like this was the original price. We had to multiply it by 0.8 for the 80% of the total cost, the 20% discount applied. And then we have to pay the sales tax on top of that. And then we would get the current price P. So it's really just multiplication if you work backwards to forwards. Question 21, more stats. Reading graphs and charts and tables. It's pretty straightforward English. All you have to do is convert the English to math. If a person is chosen at random from those recalled at least one dream, so at least one dream, it's 1 to infinite number of dreams. That's down here. What is the probability that person belonged to group Y? So you take that from here. That's going to be 979 over 125 plus 39. It's going to be 164. C. And that should be correct. Alright, question 22. More graphs. Told you this section was stats heavy. This is talking about average rate of change. Immediately you should know that's actually the term for slope. Slope is an average rate of change. So what's the change in value over the change in time, which happens to be 2 years from 2008 to 2010. That's all you need to look at in the chart over here. This is agriculture, natural resources, 8 to 10. You can use your calculator or quickly guess. And the answer divided by 2 should be around 65 million. Beware of the large numbers there. Question 23, comparing ratios. What are we comparing it to? Human resources. So we're comparing to human resources. This choice, if we take a look at human resources, the ratio is about 2 to 3. So the only other choice that is similar is going to be B. If we take a look, human resources from 7 to 10, that's going to be about 4 to 6. And education during the same time has a similar ratio as well, from 2 to 3. That's going to line up perfectly. 24 is about circle geometry. This is as simple as just graphing it out. So let's do that, and we have the equation of a circle shown right here. Alright, center 0, 4. Just a quick sketch will really do. And a radius with endpoint 4/3, 5. So this would be 4/3, that's like 1.33 repeating, and 5. You know, the circle is going to be just like this. You know, the center of the circle is HK, so that's going to be 0, 4. That makes B and D now good over here because it's negative K and negative H inside of the equation. And then remember, this is an R squared over here. So if you take the R squared, the radius is actually going to be 5/3, and you gotta square it for R squared to get 25th ninths over there. Question 25, this is all about physics, just kidding, it's just more linear equations. It's saying when the ball hits the ground, that's going to be h equals 0, of course. All you have to do is set h equal to 0, or solve for t, so 4.9 t squared minus 25t is going to equal 0. I just moved these to the other side. and you can just factor out t. 4.9t minus 25. T is going to equal 0. You know, that's right, because if you launch it vertically upward, initially at time equals 0, the height's going to be 0, and then it has to fall down, right? And all you have to do is solve for the other t. 4.9t equals 25. T is going to be around 5, because this is acting approximately. So t is around 5. Very simple. Question 26. Katerina is a botanist. This is another percent type problem. A produced 20% more than B. So 1.2 times B should equal A. This is very simple. It's just a plug and chug after this. A is 144. Just solve for B. And B should give you the answer B. Very interesting. 120. 20% more is a percent more, percent less. It's the whole. So 1 plus the percent more. The percent is 2.2, 20%, and that's going to give you 1.2. That's how we got the number here. 27. More charts. All right. This has a lot of buzzwords, but we basically just need to extrapolate in this scenario. Find the average of 10 regions that they gave us, A through J, and then multiply by 10 to get 100, which is the actual number of squares in this square field, because 10 meters by 10 meters. C should be the correct answer. If you find the average here, it should be around 150, just looking at it, eyeballing real quick, and then you have to multiply by 10 to get the total number, or actually this should be 100 rather, because each individual region is about 150, seen here, or seen here, just taking the average of any one region, and there are 100 squares, so 150 times 100 is going to give you 15,000 C. 28. Two equations is very simple. Just graph again, simply sketch and shade, and find where the overlap is going to work. You just be very careful in drawing. 2x plus 1, that's going to look kind of like this. Right? Switch different color. Y greater than 1/2 x minus 1. Minus 1. 1/2 is going to look a little less elevated. Which quadrant contains no solutions to the system? Right, you just got to do the proper shading. Greater than equal to 2x plus 1. That's all this area. And y greater than 1/2 x minus 1. Alright, so we want the overlap. That's going to be between these. Very simply, you can see there's nothing existing in region 4. So 28, the answer should be C. 29. This question has a fraction of information. A, B, and C are all very similar, but they're talking about factors here. Factors will give you a result of 0. They will give you the roots, which could or couldn't be true here. D is the correct answer in this case, because if this polynomial, whatever it is divided by x minus 3 and 3 is a result, you would actually get negative 2 left over. Question 30. These are more graphs and equations. This one is tricky because technically there's another right answer, but this is testing specifically for vertex form. Equivalent form of the equation in the graph, but you want to be able to identify the vertex easily. So you want vertex form. From vertex form, you can directly find the vertex A in this case. So we have a vertex form written out right over here. From vertex form, you can directly find A, as we have already mentioned. Choice A gives you the 0. So while it's correct, it's not directly able to see the actual vertex A. D, however, is in this similar form that we saw over here, and from we can see the vertex is going to be 1, negative 16, H and K. That's going to be the vertex, and we can see from the graph that is true as well. Finally, we have reached the final round, and this is going to test us with some open-ended questions. This is a range question, question 31 over here. All we need to do is divide the numbers that are given and choose a suitable choice in this range. So there are actually many answers. And make sure the number is whole, or it's very hard to bubble it in to the answer sheet. Knowing rates, if we have a constant number of ears of corn that we need to end up husking, if you can husk more corn per hour, you're going to take less hours necessary to finish your job. So if the lower end of this range is actually going to be 72 divided by 18, which is going to be 4, and the upper range is going to be 72 divided by 12. If you husk at a slower rate, you're going to take more hours. This is going to give us 6. That makes x inside of the range of 4 to 6. Any value between this range, whole numbers of course, is good. So you could put 4, 5, or 6. I usually just want to put a middle value to be safe, so 5. But 4 to 6 will work as well, as said earlier. Question 32. Writing a linear equation. All we need to do, once again, is convert the English to the math. 14x plus 4,500. So 14 pounds per box, x number of boxes, 4,500 is a truck and driver. That's a constant, and that has to be less than 6,000. If you divide by x, you get less than 107 point something something something. And this is asking for the maximum possible value for x. It has to be whole number, of course, because it's hard to have a fraction of a box here, and it has to be less than the combined weight below the bridge's posted weight limit of 6,000. That makes 107 good here. 33. More English conversion. This is why this section really sucks so much. You're so tired of reading, and then they slap you with more reading. According to the line graph above, the number of portable media players sold in 2008 is what fraction of the number sold in 2011? This is just a percent of question. Very simple. Just find the numbers. 100 mil. No need for that here actually because it cancels out over 160 mil. That is going to simplify down to 10 over 16 equals 5 over 8. Fill that in. Question 34. This is a simple division question. Just list out what you know and divide using your knowledge about time and stuff. Local television station sells time slots for programs, 30-minute intervals. The station operates 24 hours per day, every day of the week, not really important. Total number of 30-minute time slots the station can sell for Tuesday and Wednesday. Alright, that is going to be 2 days worth of programming, 24 hours per day, times 2 days. And this is for each hour. In each hour, you can actually have 2 slots per hour because, you know, they're 30 minutes. You multiply that out, it's going to be 96, your answer. Question 35, this is a volume question. Make sure you really know your math and geometry well here. Using the formula, we can easily solve for r, but actually be very careful. It's underlined. You want diameter, so once you solve for r, make sure you multiply by 2. B equals pi r squared h. Good to know that formula. Equals height is 8 yards as they gave you. Make sure you watch out for any conversions. Sometimes they like to sneak those in. R squared, cancel the pi's. R squared is going to be 9. R equals 3. You can't have negative radius. Times 2 to get diameter. That's 6. Be real careful there. 36. H of x is undefined. That's what we want here. Remember preconditions we talked about earlier. Same thing here. Division can't have 0 in the denominator. That's a big no-no. 1 over 0, very bad. All right, that would give us a divide by 0 error. So in this case, that's actually what we want. So just set the denominator to 0 and solve for x, because it's asking for what value of x makes this whole thing undefined. Plus 4x minus 5 plus 4. This looks complicated, but you can actually use substitution. For 10, let's just say a equals x minus 5. Then this becomes a squared plus 4a plus 4. Very simple. Now you can just factor 1, 1, 2, and 2. A plus 2 squared. You can factor, all right. What value of x is this undefined? We have to set it equal to 0 because that's going to make the denominator 0. A plus 2 squared equals 0. Remember to sub in for a though, because we used that as something else. X minus 5 plus 2 squared equals 0. X minus 3 squared equals 0. X is 3. Finally, 37 and 38, last two, banking questions. Well, they love bringing in real-world examples. Remember, for these interest problems, it's always just the principal, the initial amount. That's your principal, times the going rate to the exponent, which happens to be time. So x is going to be our going rate. We have a basic form here given to us, as I've already annotated on. Question 37 asks us for what x is. Knowing banking and stuff and how these interest rates work, you should be able to figure out that x is really just the rate. It must be the value that the compound interest will ultimately add to your total. So that's the base, your initial sum, 1, plus the 2% that's added, because that's the added value the interest gives you. So 1 plus 0.02, remember we got that from 2%. That's going to be 1.02. So x should actually be 1.02. 38. And finally, more reading. Taishan here has a better rate than Jess. We want to find the difference between these two people over time. Simply put, we can just plug and chug and compare the two. So for Taishan, we have this formula that is given up here, but instead of the 2% rate, it's 2.5% rate. So for Taishan, that's going to be 100 times 1.025, because it's 2.5%, times the time, which is going to be 10 years here. For Jess, we already wrote it to t as well. All you need to do is find the difference between two. Beware of rounding, be very careful, don't round until the end, and you should be able to get 6.11 as your answer.